Alright, and we're back. Eric, I'm going to be working on hopefully finishing up Asiphixious tonight. Where we are at with him last time we were on air, we refined all your purple highlights here, got everything base coated in the silver, and what I want to do tonight is get the eye painted on the staff there and start getting some of the what's the word I'm thinking of, washing done on the armor to produce, you know, the weathered kind of look that you were looking for with the armor. I'm going to show you kind of a quick and dirty way of doing it, no pun intended there, so that way you know, it's not something that is too labor intensive as you go to work on your own army. We'll also work a little bit on the backpack tonight too. So following up from the previous PaintCast I was doing, talking a little bit about Star Wars, and someone just posted up in chat, I wish they made a Star Wars 40K type miniature game. I would jump into that game so fast. You and me both. I would be all over that game as well. X-Wing has been a exercise in self-control, Star Wars X-Wing game, and also the Rebel Assault, or excuse me, Imperial Assault game. Both of those games have been a tremendous exercise in self-control for me, because I just want to own all of the miniatures, regardless of whether or not they're playable. So, and in fact, you know, Imperial Assault is a little bit 40K-ish. It's not unit-based. It's you know, more like War Machine, where you can have individual models activate. But it's that game has a campaign that comes in the box set, but you can also play a skirmish version of it as well, which is pretty fun. I mean, you're quite limited in characters at this point, but I definitely think there's room for expansion, and I definitely think we will see it expanded, because it is quite a fun game. If you haven't checked that one out yet, see if you can head to your local game shop and get that game demoed, because it's pretty cool. So I want to jump right in though on the eye here. And Eric, when we were talking in previous PaintCasts, excuse me, you had mentioned that you wanted that eye to kind of look orangish, like a dragon eye. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to switch over here to my window capture on the PaintCast, and let me just get this set here. There we go. And I'm just going to go here to Google, and I'm going to type in dragon eye, and then pull up some images. And let's see if we can find one I like here that will work with the colors that you have going on. First off, you got a lot of purple happening. We've got some green happening. So this one right here might not be a bad choice. Kind of a dark amber green to a light yellowish with a black slit for a pupil. So that one might be kind of cool. I mean, I guess we could get fancy with the slit there. I think that's going to be our best bet, man. Yeah, let's go back up there to that one. We'll click on this. We'll view image, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this off now. I've got it up on my other screen here. I'm going to use this as a reference, and now we got to figure out how I'm going to replicate that on that little staff right there. Let me think here. What kind of colors do we want to use? I think we're going to start with a base coat of P3 Bloodstone. I think that's probably not a bad place to start. And then we will work up to mixing some Heartfire in there, and then probably Cygnus Yellow, although Cygnus Yellow is a bit thin as far as yellows go. I like to use Vallejo Flat Yellow, so we might go that route. So let's start with the Bloodstone and see where we go from there. Okay. And for something like this, Eric, I do recommend using a brush with a finer tip on it, so that way you've got some good control. You don't want to get too messy. Nice solid base coat there. Okay, and we're gonna actually layer the colors on here instead of blending or two brush blending or glazing or anything like that. We're just going to layer up to the brightest colors as soon as we get ourselves a nice solid base coat there. While that's drying, I want to get out a gold color here that we're going to use for the filigree areas on his armor here. So like these arm pads here, a little bit of the shoulder there. What I want to recommend to use is the scale 75 Negro Gold. Cryx Blighted Gold is going to be a real similar color. In fact, you could probably get away with the Blighted Gold and not even worry about any kind of real color difference at this point. So if you're not able to get a hold of the scale 75 paints, or you find that you don't like how they work, that would be a good alternative. And for all the gold on your Cryx, this is the color that I would recommend that you use as the base coat. The spikes here on the forearm guard, we're going to just do those in a silver color. Once everything dries, of course. The other thing I've been thinking about too, Eric, that I'm still haven't totally figured out what we're going to do yet, is the soles that you provided for his base. The problem I'm running into is that the base of his cloak is so wide, or his cape here is so wide, that it actually doesn't leave a lot of room on the base to attach the soles anywhere. So I've been experimenting and thinking about what I want to do. One thought I had was to elevate Asiphixious a little bit off of some cork or something like that that's been made to look like groundwork. That might be one option. I'm pretty sure those soles have to be represented in order for this conversion to count as a epic Asiphixious conversion. So still kind of working on that, trying to figure out those details. Just painting these scroll cases, incense cases, whatever they are, I don't know. Just getting a base coat of this gold onto them. Also, we'll add some gold here on the staff too, in various places, once we get a little further along on that. What's nice too about when you start adding this gold color in, you're increasing the contrast on the model, and so you're starting to see how the colors also all are working together and creating some nice visuals there. I think I will also paint thinking about this trim here, doing that in gold. I think it'll just frame things nicely. Underside here as well. Yeah, I like how that frames things in a little better there. Doesn't make the metallic silver base look as overpowering as it was. So it does look like too that this trim piece carries up onto here, so we're just going to kind of paint this whole pauldron piece now. Which again, I think it's going to work fairly well. I think it's going to frame things up real nice for us, so that looks good. I mentioned this word framing. I've used it now a couple times. Basically what the idea behind that is you're using colors on a model. You can use colors, different colors on a model placed in different areas to draw the eye to specific places. Generally speaking, on miniatures, you kind of want that focal point to be where the head is. And by placing this darker yellow gold, black gold color right here on either side of where his head will be, that'll create a nice frame for the head to rest in between. And since his head is going to obviously be white with a little bit of OSL happening on it, it should make that skeletal head pop out just a little further. And it looks like the base of these spikes is also going to have this gold trim on them as well. Okay. By now, the base coat for the dragon's eye should be nice and dry. So you can kind of see my wet palette back up in here. It's a little bit out of focus, but I'm going to have to keep it that way in order to stay in focus on the Mini. And what we're going to do is a little bit of layering here, okay? And put some of the Heartfire right above the brown there. And what I do is I'll take a little bit of the base color on my brush and just set it right here next to the original color, okay? And then I'll take a little bit of the highlight color and I add that in there. And I'm just going to mix back and forth between these two colors until I have a shade that is just slightly lighter than this one, okay? And that'll be pretty good there. And this first layer you're going to apply on about probably 90% of the surface here. So that the bloodstone color, pure bloodstone color, is mostly at the edges. And honestly, you're not going to see a huge difference between that base coat layer and this first layer, especially on the camera. And now you're going to move on to the second layer, again mixing the same thing, but now you want a base coat that is just a little lighter than the previous base coat you used. You see what I got going on there. And you're going to start applying this new layer. Last one was about 90% of the area. This one you want to do about 70% of the area on the eye. Maybe in the 80s even. You're just kind of honestly eyeballing it at this point. No pun intended there. But there's no hard fast rule for it. You know, you're slowly building up the layers. Excuse me. And this technique is applicable to, you know, anything other than eyes. It doesn't have to be just eyes. It doesn't have, you know, you can do this on a cloak. You can do this on metals. You can do this on skin. You're just slowly building up the different layers. Okay, so that's the next layer. Now, again, same thing. You're just going to mix it even lighter still and apply it again to an even smaller area. And the more similar the colors are between layers, the smoother your layering and transitioning will go. And you can already start to see how that's building up nicely. Okay. And at this point, I'm going to start layering with straight Heartfire. And Heartfire is a fairly thin color, so you're not really going to need to thin it. And as you're applying it, it's almost going to feel like it's glazing on. To be quite honest. Okay. And then I think that's probably as far as I want to go with that. What I'm going to do now is get some straight black, and we're going to build the vertical slit that represents the iris of the dragon eye. And you're going to want this slit to run from the top of the eyelid to the bottom of the eyelid. And just like the reference picture, you want it to be wider in the middle and narrower at the top and the bottom. Okay. Do the same thing now on the other side. Okay. It's looking pretty good. Now we'll take the last color that I pulled out, the Vallejo flat gold, or flat yellow, excuse me. And this one, Eric, you're going to have to, this will be a little bit of practice for you. You'll need to practice on this, because what you're going to want to do is put a very thin line of the yellow on either side of that iris. Okay, that's the step one. So very carefully, there's one. And this is the other side here. See how that looks? And then the next thing you want to do when you go to recreate this is add a small yellow line that runs about in the middle, perpendicular to the iris. Just keep that fairly thin. And if you go over the black, that's fine. Okay. We'll just touch up the black real quick where we messed up there, or not messed up, but covered it with the yellow. Alright, that's looking pretty good. And then we'll do the yellow on the other side now. Again, we're adding a very thin yellow line on either side of the iris. Excuse me, the pupil. And then we're going to add a line, it's a very thin yellow line that runs perpendicular to the iris. And then go back in and touch up the black pupil. I keep saying pupil and iris, I'm sorry. I think you know what I mean though. Alright, and there is one dragon eye on a stick. Now what we need to do, though, we're not quite done yet. Take a little bit of umbral umber, okay, and a little bit of the original base color we used, the bloodstone. And what I want you to do, or what you'll do now, is apply this color to the bottom side of the eyelid. And looking at that, I think I could go even darker. Let's add a little bit of black into that with a little bit of the bloodstone. And again, applying it in the same spot there. You're just trying to create an impression of shadow underneath here. Alright. See, that's looking alright. And then we'll do the same thing on the bottom of the eyelid, but try and keep the line fairly thin if you can. Same thing on the other side. Okay, you see how that looks? Looking very dragonish, dragon-esque. And then the last thing I want to do here is we're going to add a quick glaze of some brown ink. P3 brown ink. Excuse me guys, I've been fighting a cold. Still coming off of it. Do not use full concentrated brown ink here. Okay, you're going to end up with messing up what you've done. Remember, with washes, glazes, things like that, less is more. You can always add more. You cannot take away. So you want to do a fairly thin amount, and what you want to do is get it just in the corners. Just kind of glazing that into the corners. Okay. And there you go. There is your dragon eye. Let's zoom in on that. There's that side, and then there's that side. Not bad. Looks pretty cool. Grub Killing Gear is asking if I did the whole eye in this cast. Yes, I did. Took me all of about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, not too long. So when this gets up onto the YouTubes, you'll be able to watch it from start to finish. It was actually pretty easy, considering that I had no idea what I was going to do when I started. So looking at this and how it is all laying out, I think this big piece right here across the top of the staff definitely needs some gold on it. I think we'll put some gold on this little detail piece here. Good call on your part, Eric. My original plan was just to paint that eye, the green OSL. Good call going with the dragon eye. I think that looks a lot better. And see, that's the kind of stuff that these paint casts are able to get. You kind of get a collaborative thing going on between me and the person who is getting something painted. You know, so it's you know, you end up, your input, the person that the input that the client provides is really vital to the final product. You know, and I think what makes this whole process really unique, because you're kind of doing this with me at the same time. Discovering how how the colors are going to interact and what colors to use where and how to apply them. So this is cool. That's a good example of PaintCast accomplishing exactly what it's supposed to. Okay, it's looking pretty good. He's starting to look more and more complete at this point. I'm going to set this aside for a moment, let that start drying. I want to talk a little bit about the skeletal head for Asphyxious and how we're going to paint that, Eric, and how you can quickly paint skeletal type features on your Cryx army in general. So we've got his head here, and remember I purposely left the head off when I primed him and everything, because I didn't want to make painting this head difficult. I wanted to keep it easy. So he got primed white and then airbrushed marl white. Okay. So if you're going to do those skeleton type effects, that would be a good base color to use, is the marl white. And then you're going to use Army Painter Quick Shade Ink Soft Tone. And this is real similar to the sepia, Griffin sepia, that GW used to produce. It's kind of the lighter version of Devlin Mud, if you remember that one. And simply take the area that is going to be the bone feature and give it a liberal wash with this soft tone. And then you're just going to let it dry. A little bit of paint got rubbed off there, but I'll clean that. Well, actually, you're not even going to see that once it goes into the bucket. So you're going to let that dry, and then I'll set this aside while it dry, so it can dry for just a minute. And then when it's done drying, we will add some highlights and shadows in there, refine those things just a little further. So set that aside for a moment. Come back to this guy here, and I want to talk about now how we're going to quickly do the weathering on him, okay, and on all the metal surfaces for that matter in your army, because you don't want to, when you're painting an entire army, 50 to 100 miniatures, the last thing you want to do is get caught up in techniques that are going to take too long. I mean, you'll go crazy if you're sitting there trying to layer and wet blend every single detail. I mean, there's people that do that, more power to them, but when we're talking on entire armies, you know, what I'm trying to do here is help you get one on the table as quick as you can, you know, and not necessarily painting one for display. So that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from on this. You know, is how can we take some of these techniques and produce quick results. The first thing, as I'm sure you've seen me do already on other PaintCasts, is a wash. Okay, and for dirty type metals, I like to use the Secret Weapon Miniature Armor Wash. It has a nice brown, warmish tone to it. When I'm doing clean metals, I use that term loosely, much like what I did on the Signar Charger a little earlier. Okay, I like to use the P3 Armor Wash. It's a little bit more blue and purple based, so you get a little bit more of a cooler result. Cool as in temperature, not cool as in how it looks. So, first things first, start with a wash of the Secret Weapon Miniature Armor Wash. You don't really need to dilute it. It goes on just fine, full strength. The other thing I like to do, particularly on this Asphyxious model, I've painted it before, I like to put the wash in here because it helps separate some of the detail here in this waist area where he's got all these armor plates rocking around. The other thing is this armor wash works really nice on this black gold color that we used here. Still some metal pieces that I have to pick out, but I'll go back and get those. I'm just trying to demonstrate techniques to you, or for you at this point. Well, one thing you do want to watch out for is we've applied some of these OSL effects, and we don't want to screw that up. So as you get close to where those effects are, make sure to be careful with your brush so you don't ruin the work that's already been done. And we might have to go back and clean up some of these OSL effects, you know, reestablish them. But that's all right. I mean, it's part of painting. You know, you go back and forth, back and forth. You can already see the difference that this wash is making all around. It's creating a lot darker of a look. It's creating separation between colors, which is causing details to stand out. You know, it's doing all those things that washes are meant to do. Trying to think what other Cryx pieces there are where you're going to be able to repeat that dragon eye theme, because I think that turned out really nice. It'd be nice if there'd be a way for you to repeat that throughout your army. Okay, I'll do the staff separate later. I don't want to get too caught up in that one right now. Add some to the hood here. Cowling behind the head. This mostly will all be covered up by the backpack. That's why I didn't go too much on that one. Okay, so now we kind of want to let that wash dry for a little bit. Okay, we're going to come back to that in just a second. All right, and I want to look at the skeletal head that we did, and this is looking fairly dry enough. So what you want to do is, again, with continuing these skeletal type features, Menoth white base. And this Menoth white base you're going to basically use to hit all the highlights on the skeleton. Okay, so we're gonna hit the eyebrow, we're gonna hit the bridge of the nose, the cheek there, kind of dot around where some of the teeth are. On the forehead here, we're going to paint in a downward motion towards the front of the skeleton. Okay. Try to really only pick up the high points here. If you were painting like an arm from a bone from an arm or a bone from a leg, at this point you would kind of want to do long, smooth strokes on the bone to kind of give the bone some added texture. But we're not doing that. So, and then you want to go straight to Menoth white highlight and kind of hit those parts again. Again, just hitting where the highlights are here. The brow, cheekbone, bridge of the nose, upper lip, teeth. See how that's starting to turn out. Now before you go on to the final highlight, let's get some shading done. For the shading, I recommend kind of a nice sepia type color on the bone. Guncore brown is a good one. Bootstrap leather can be a good one. It's a little red, but depending on the other colors that you have going on, this can work. Umber thinned down can also work, and we may end up using a little bit of that, but I'm going to stick with the Guncore brown and probably go with adding a little bit of the umber into it for the deepest shadows. This you're going to want to make a little thinner off your wet palette, and if you find that when you apply the color it's too strong, too much of a jump in the shadow, you can add a little bit of the Menoth white base into it to compensate for that. So just kind of adding the shadow in, letting it kind of wash into some of the deep parts here, right around the strap, in the nose, under the eye here, under the cheekbone, under the skull. And you can see more or less where that's starting to go. And then get a little bit of umbral umber and just mix a little bit of that with a little bit of the guncore brown. Probably 50-50 is where you want to go. And just kind of apply that into the deepest shadows. See the contrast that that's starting to make there. And I'm going to take a little bit of the Menoth White highlight now, and I just want to put a little bit of a highlight here on the top of the skull in between those two straps. I'm going to have to come back and put some shadow in there though. Okay. Get some of this shadow color now and clean up where I got a little too zealous with the white. So that's looking very skeletal. Now about the eye. The eye that is not covered by a freaky eye patch. We're going to take Necrotite Green. And this will be a little tricky because it's a pretty small spot, but as best you can, get that color on there. Use yourself a pretty fine point brush. And try to cover as much of the area as you can, because step 2 is to take some of that Menoth White highlight and mix it with the Necrotite Green to produce a nice bright green. And you just want to get that highlight right on the center of the dot just to make that eye pop a little bit more. And then for the straps for that eye patch, let's start with Hex Lichen. And I think the purple will contrast really nicely against this white. And just using the side of the brush, okay, get this, the top of this strap painted. Be real careful not to get anything on the white, because it'd be pretty hard to cover it up or fix that at this point with how dark this color is and how light the white is in comparison. Looking pretty good. And then we'll take a little bit of cold steel, or excuse me, pig iron, P3 pig iron, and then we're just going to paint the actual eye portion. Of his little patch here. Alright, well, we're going to let that dry. Someone is asking in chat if I figured out my little paint problem from earlier today. I posted on Facebook that I was experiencing a little bit of frustration on a painting technique. No, I have not figured it out. I'm actually setting it aside for a couple days to kind of let my mind reset, so to speak, and come back to it this weekend after I've had some time away from it to figure out what I really want. So I'm taking some of the Warlord Purple now, which of course is the highlight color we've been using, and I'm just going to add a real soft thin highlight to these straps. Okay. Right. Now for the glowing part on the eye here, I'm just going to drop a little bit of a P3 armor wash in behind here just to get that eye to pop out a little bit further. But I can tell there's some kind of lens or glowing portion on that eye patch. Let's look on the P3 website and see what color they painted theirs as a reference. Alright. Because I'm not sure if I want to do it as green. But I'm not sure if I want to do it as a different color either, so let's just kind of take a look here. So it looks like on the original studio model it is painted green, so we're going to stick with that. I think that's the safest thing to do. So back to the necrotite green. Okay, and then get some of that white that I mixed up, the necrotite green and Menoth white highlight to create a little bit of a highlight color, and just getting that in the center there. last thing I want to do here on the head is, since we have established a glowing effect coming from within the bucket there, the head bucket, I want to add a little bit of green glow to the head here, but I want to do it pulling back towards the back of the head, so that way any part of the head that is showing out from the side or whatnot has a little bit of this green glow on there, just to kind of reinforce the glowing effect that we established earlier. Don't want to get too crazy with it, just enough to provide that hint that that's what's going on. So not much there. And then I think I want to go ahead and mount this in there tonight, and probably call it quits on the Cryx tonight and spend just a couple minutes. Actually, let me look at my time here. I think I'll just call it quits for the night in general. If anyone has any questions in the chat, now's the time to put them up, as I'm going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes. So you can ask away, and I can do my best to answer them. Just going to add a drop of super glue on the little nib that's inside there. And just use this toothpick here to position that head where I want it. There we go. And he is a little lopsided. There we go. Good. Liking it. And just one little spot there to touch up, it looks like. All right. Get my zoom here fixed. And there we go, right there. All right. Looking pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about for a second before I wrap up, actually, because I said I was going to come back to it. Dirty metals. We already base coated everything in pig iron. We then washed everything in secret weapon miniature wash, armor wash. Now what we're going to do is a quick dry brush using cold steel. Okay, but you don't want to be all crazy all over the place with this dry brushing. You want to be fairly controlled with it, so that means you're going to need to use a fairly small brush when you do it. Okay. So that's my small dry brush. And you're going to want most of the color to be wiped off the paper towel. We'll just start back here. And you're really just trying to focus on hitting, first off, just the metallics, just the silver parts. Steer clear of the golds, okay? And you're really just lightly dragging it over. Excuse me. To just get the highlight edges. Okay. One, you shouldn't have to reload your dry brush very often. On a model like this, you should be able to get around most of the model without having to reload that dry brush. I mean, this is really light, this is really soft, and it's just enough to kind of bring those edge details out. Okay. Really gently on there. Alright, that looks pretty good. So you can see how that's brought back some of the original color. Okay. Even brightened it up a little bit in some ways. Okay, you've created some nice shadows just by doing a quick, simple dry brush like that. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to take yourself a couple shades of brown. So, and even some blues maybe, or some greens. I mean, whatever color you want to use here is really up to you for those of you who are going to try this on your own. Eric, for your miniature here, I'm going to be sticking with Umbral Umber and Bloodstone. And you want to make a couple of fairly thin glazes. So just a little bit of water, a little bit of paint. You see on my hand there how thin that is. And then just kind of in the corners here, you kind of want to pull, and along the edges, you just kind of want to pull this wash. Okay. Try not to let it pull up too much. Alright. And if some of this gets on the gold, that's fine too. And you don't have to be overly consistent with where you apply all this paint. Okay? You're just kind of applying it randomly, but where you really want to be focusing on is the joints between the metals. Okay? And this is going to help create a very dirty, rusty, worn effect on your metals. Sorry about that, guys. That was my wife calling. I just had to take that real quick. But back to what I was saying, these thin washes like this are going to help create a rusty, dirty effect. And really, with this, Eric, when you're doing it, be careful with how much you're applying at one time. Okay, because if the wash is applied too thick, it's going to create a hard edge on the paint, which means it's going to look like it was painted on. Okay, You really want to keep it thin and just really glaze it on, and make sure that you're left with a nice soft edge on the paint. Nothing that's too hard or too stark. Let's see, where was I? Down here. Here in this chain area right there. And again, you know, don't think you've got to cover every plate. Don't think you've got to cover every crack, every crevice. You want to keep it random. You want to keep it kind of spread out and you know, not localized in too much of one spot, because it helps when it's done this way. It helps add to the overall effect. Some of the hands there, between some of those fingers. Okay, it's looking good. All right, now what I want to do is take a little bit of the umbral umber and doing the same thing, just again random areas. Avoid it pulling up too much. Probably going to put a little bit of a heavier wash right into here, into this area. Okay, and the brown you probably don't want to use quite as much as you do of the bloodstone. The bloodstone, I think you can get away with a little more heavily, but this brown color is pretty dark. You don't want to get too crazy on it. And you can see how that's starting to create some nice worn, dirty metallic colors. And then the last thing you want to do here is take a 50-50 mix of cold still and quicksilver, and just, you know, thin on your brush, fairly thin there, and just pick out some edges. Okay. You don't want to be too systematic with this. You don't want to be too clean with this, too strong with this. You're just kind of picking out some details here and there of where the light might be glinting off an edge that isn't dirty or worn, or, you know, just giving a little bit of a highlight. Or and I'm really being quite light with the brush right now, Eric, and by light I mean as I'm dragging it across these areas, I'm barely barely letting it touch the surface. So when you go to do this as well, remember that and keep that in mind. And we can do the same thing with the gold too. We can let that, brighten that gold up just a little bit more. This Necro gold is so dark though that I don't think we need to add any shading to this like we have with the silver color. But we can take some. See, I've got some dwarven gold here that I was using on a previous project. That's still on my wet palette and pretty good. So you can take this and kind of do the same thing. Again, just being really, really light with your brush, just gently pulling it over some of the edges. Keep going off camera there, guys. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. You can see how that starts making those pop out a little bit more. So there you go, there's Asiphixious. He's, gosh, 90% done now. Only things left to fix on him, or finish up on him rather, would be the little chainmail here at the bottom, and his staff, and then his pack, of course. So I hope this has been good for you, Eric, and that you've enjoyed it and gotten something out of it. I'm going to take a look now at the excuse me, at the chat room, and just make sure there's no questions that I need to answer that I haven't missed yet, and then I'll probably wrap up for the night. Just looking back through chat here real quick, it looks like there's really just one question that was asked. It says, how often do you paint a miniature to the highest level your skills will allow? Do you enter painting competitions? I've entered a lot of local painting competitions here in Idaho and Utah. I am entering Lock and Load this year. I'm going to Lock and Load. I'll be there. And I do have an entry that I'm working on for that. After Lock and Load's over, make sure and keep your eyes open for that. I'll probably be posting some pictures up of it then. But generally, I really haven't entered a lot of painting competitions. And do I paint to my highest skill level? That's honestly, I don't quite know how to answer that question, because I don't even know if I fully know what my highest skill level is. If that makes sense. I know it doesn't sound right, or it might sound odd, but I guess because I've never really entered a high-level competition like a Lock and Load or a Gen Con or something like that, I don't know what my highest skill level is because I haven't had to do that yet. I'm doing it right now, of course, with my entry with Lock and Load, and there's definitely some frustrations I'm experiencing because I'm really trying to push myself, and I'll talk more about that, after Lock and Load's over. But yeah, generally speaking, I think that's probably why I don't know where my ceiling is yet, is because I haven't put myself in a painting situation for me to discover that yet. So, Eric's asking, do I have Death Jack and Denny nearby? He looks like he's on chat. right now. I don't have them right here. I'd have to get up and go grab them, but nothing's happened on them since we last did our PaintCast. I'll probably next be working on them probably Thursday night, or this Saturday. I'm going to be doing a PaintCast during the day on Saturday, so I'll be working on them more then as well. So keep your eyes open for that. So anyway, guys, thanks for being on tonight. Really appreciate y'all being here, interacting. I hope everybody got something out of this, and that you're enjoying these PaintCasts so far. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at redmodeling@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/redmodelingpaint, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If you're also interested in getting your own PaintCast video done, you can find all that information there on my Facebook page. And then, of course, you can ask me directly at my email address that I had mentioned earlier. Until then, guys, have a good night, and thanks a lot for being here. We'll talk to y'all later. Good night.